Good evening. We ask the women to please find a seat, and if everyone could take the moment right now to turn their cell phones on silent. Welcome. Welcome to Nshei Ubnos Chabad Vav Tishrei event, our Mother of Royalties 60th yahrzeit. The Rebbe shares that in the years of a double Adar, in a leap year, that we are batal b'shishim the negative, something we are very much in need of right now. Rebbetzin Chana, the epitome of a wife and mother. The Rebbetzin, the most devoted mother. And the Rebbe, the epitome of a son. When I think of Rebbetzin Chana, my namesake, I think Mesiras Nefesh, a magnitude so far and distant and not reachable to the common mind. The second thought I have is warmth. I connect with her love and appreciation. It penetrates in her photos and writings. Our matriarch has given us direction, love, and commitment in sharing with us her diary, and with that, sharing with us a mother in Israel. Tonight we commemorate Vav Tishrei. In light of October 7th and Simchas Torah, we gained strength from our Rebbetzin Chana's majestic bearings in the face of adversity. We thank Hashem for the incredible miracles we are witnessing, and we resolve to lean into our Simcha and Bitachon and greet Mashiach with our heads held high. This year is 5785 Taf Shin Pei He. Tehei Shnas Pidyon Hashvoyim. Let it be right now. During these sensitive times and standing during our Aseres Yemei Tshuva, we take notes, inspiration, and direction from our very own Rebbetzin Chana. Let's step in. We begin this evening with our Rebbe and Rebbetzins Kapitel, followed by Kapitel Chaf, with our hearts and minds and prayers for Eretz Yisrael. Please rise.
I don't care. I don't care. Please be nice to me. Be nice to me. You do this one. Back up.
Okay.
Right into the mic, loud and clear and slow. Ready, steady, go.
Shir hamalei selachana sasiyas enaya yeshvi bashamayim. Hine che'ine avadim al yad anehem. Ke'ene shevcha al yad keverta. Ken eninu alei aleinu. Ad shechanenu. Chanenu Adonai chanenu. Ki rav savanu vos. Rabba sava la nafshenu ala gashanim abos l'geinim. Yechiyad enenu marinu v'rabinu melech HaMashiach la'elam vad. Shir hamalech leDavid, lulei Adonai shehaya lanu yamena Yisrael. Lulei Adonai shehaya lanu yamena Yisrael. She'lanu b'kom aleinu adam. Azay chayim v'lanu b'acharei sapam banu. Azay hamayim shetafunu nachla avar al nafshenu. Azay avar al nafshenu hamayim azidenu. Baruch Adonai shalai nisananu taraf l'shineim. Nafshenu kitzipar nimlatami pachikshin hapach nishbar v'anachnu nimlatu. Ezreinu b'shem Adonai aisei shamayim v'aretz. Lam hatzeach mizmar leDavid yancha Adonai b'yom tzara yitzhak emcha shem alei Yaakov yishlach ezercha mikaydash u'mitziyayin yisadeka yiskar kol min chaysecha v'elascha yidash nesela. Yitin lecha chel vavecha v'chol tzascha yamale. Niranan abishuasecha v'shem Eloheinu negal. Yimale Adonai kol mashalisecha. Ata yadaiti ki yesh Adonai meshichai. Yaneu mishmei kachay b'gevuras yisha yiminai. Ela v'racha ve'ela v'asusim v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu nasker. Heima karu v'nafalu v'anachnu kamnu v'nesedek. Adonai yishia melech yaninu v'yom karinu.
Thank you, girls. Beautiful job. In a moment, we will be watching a video that Jem has provided for us. We thank Jem for the excellent quality and taking the extra step to help us tonight in providing this video. We are very, very appreciative. Please direct your attention to the screen, Rebbetzin Chana.
Rebbetzin Chana Schneerson was born on the 28th of Teves in 1880. to Mer Shlomo Yanovsky, the rabbi of Nikolaev, Ukraine, and his wife Rachel. The young girl's scholarship was well known to the city's Hasidim. When a new discourse would arrive from Rabbi Shalom Dovber, the Rebbe in Lubavitch, she would transcribe it for the eager Hasidim. At his suggestion, in 1900, she married his devoted Chassid, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, a great-grandson of the third Rebbe and already a renowned scholar and Kabbalist. Rebbetzin Chana would give birth to 3 sons, Menachem Mendel, Dov Ber, and Yisrael Aryeh Leib. The eldest would eventually become the 7th Rebbe. In 1909, when she was 29 years old, her husband became rabbi of Yekaterinoslav, Ukraine, a position he would hold until the end of his life. Fluent in several languages, she was partner to her husband as he led the Jews of their city, her home becoming the hub of the community. She counseled on matters personal, academic, and spiritual.
This was the house where ladies would congregate and talk and discuss things about poor colors, which means about somebody's pregnant and would like to have a breeze, or somebody would, with a miracle, want to have a bar mitzvah. But this was absolutely 150% forbidden.
During World War I, when hundreds of thousands of displaced Jews arrived in their city, the Rebbetzin stood at the helm of the relief efforts.
Und damals ich gewinn Bereich von der Wadim ist gewinn bemammet. Mit damals gesehen hat Dwarf Pellert, als ich käme und gesehen der Linie von Haisaskus, der Meeres Achi Gordel, und sei bei Jem und sei bei Lailo, hat gedikach, als viele, als Sokre, gewinn nicht in Huis, nur in Cheder, wie kann jetzt über sie, was das auf sehr viel gewinn beilig, als Nechker geworden, bechol Neshech Yemei Achai.
The rise of communism brought with it strict anti-religious rules. Despite becoming a constant target of the secret police, who were set on sowing fear, she stood behind her husband as he defied the threats, fiercely proclaiming the Soviet Constitution's assurance to personal religious freedom. In 1926, she traveled to Leningrad to meet with the previous Rebbe about the match between his middle daughter and her eldest son. But when the wedding finally took place 2 years later in Warsaw, Poland, the Soviet government refused Rebbetzin Chana and Rabbi Levi Yitzchak permission to attend, forcing them to mark the event in their home.
Дети так танцевали. Реб Левик с нами, и его жена, и взрослые, кто привел нас туда, вдруг все пустились в пляс, все танцевали.
One night in 1939, the secret police finally arrested Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, keeping his whereabouts secret from his wife. After dragging from one prison to another for 8 impossible months, Rebbetzin Chana was finally informed that her husband was alive, guilty of anti-Soviet propaganda. He had been sentenced to 5 years of exile in the Central Asian region of the Soviet Union in a little town called Chile in Kazakhstan. Come what may, she resolved, she would journey to that isolated town to join her husband. Her diaries record the dire conditions there. She did everything she possibly could to improve his situation, scraping together food and manufacturing ink from herbs, which enabled her husband to record his Kabbalistic teachings. In 1944, after 5 terrible years, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak's sentence was completed. Stranded in the region by the World War which was raging around them, the couple reached the nearby city of Alma Ata. A few months later, on the 20th of Av, 1944, her husband passed away there. Stranded and completely alone, Rebbetzin Chana desperately yearned to reach her son in New York. An underground network of Hasidim finally smuggled her out of Russia to Poland. Once the war ended, she reached a displaced persons camp in Pucking, Germany, where she spent several months.
She was in a bunk, and I was looking after her. And I was going with her for a spazier, and I was making her stove, and we gelebt zusammen.
In 1947, she finally arrived in Paris, France. Her son immediately set out to greet her there. After 19 years of painful separation, mother and son were finally reunited.
Und wie der Rebbe ist umgekommen, ist gleich hereingegangen in dem Cheder, wie der Mama gesessen, und geblieben sitzen dort am Mescher Zman Ma. Hat man gesehen, wie der Rebbe kämpft gegen Tränen und hat geweint.
After several months in the French capital, her son escorted her back to New York, where she spent the next 17 years at his side. From the day she moved to the United States until she passed away, the Rebbe would walk up Kingston Avenue to visit her, every single day without fail treating her like a regal queen.
The visit from the Rebbe was the hour of the day for her, was when she came in. By her it was, she was very, very, very proud of the Rebbe. She told once my husband, weiß nicht, was ich vermag. Sag das nicht, weil ich bin eine Mama, nur sehe das.
When the 6th Rebbe passed away in 1950, she watched as her son assumed leadership of the movement. During those happy last years, she carried the title of the Rebbe's mother with dignity and without pretension. She always took a genuine interest in the well-being of each person she encountered, much in the style that her son would become renowned for.
She would ask me and all the other women about them, their children, how they are. She was exceedingly friendly to everybody.
On the 6th of Tishrei, 1964, at 84 years old, Rebbetzin Chana passed away. Her son, with Rebbes, Hasidim, and dignitaries of all stripes, paid their last respects. After her passing, the Rebbe undertook a series of new initiatives in her memory, most notably introducing a new method to the study of Rashi, the Torah's foremost commentary. Every year, he would commemorate her yahrzeit with a Farbrengen, where he would speak of the role of the Jewish woman. Numerous institutions to benefit Jewish women and girls were built in her memory. Here is the testimony of several of those who knew and observed Rebbetzin Chana up close, collected as part of the My Encounter with the Rebbe project.
We will now enjoy a Nigunim medley and song about Rebbetzin Chana by my classmate's talented daughter, singer Chava Bronstein, and musician Devorah Slavatitsky. Please join along. Thank you. That was really beautiful. Last year, I went to pay a shiva call. When I entered the home, the elderly mother had a photo hanging on the wall. It was her at a Nshei Ubnos Chabad event, I think in the 1950s. And sitting next to her was Rebbetzin Chana. Rebbetzin Chana lived for the Rebbe's mitzvahs, organizations. She was so proud. And she was there from the beginning of Nshei Ubnos Chabad. A few weeks ago, I paid another Shiva call. This Shiva call was to, I want to say it the way I wrote it because it means a lot to me. The Shiva call that I paid was to our leader of these times in the Nshei Chabad, a devoted chassid, a role model, consistent, Mrs. Chana Popak. With her recent passing, I've been reflecting on Nshei Ubnos Chabad. I am humbled and proud to share that from as old as I remember myself, I attended conventions, gatherings, Farbrengens, thanks to parents that are and were chassidim in action. I bench all the members, leaders of the Nshei Ubnos Chabad committee with arichas yamim and shanim tayvos. At this time, I want to lead you to your bags where there is a Nshei Ubnos Chabad membership card. We ask that you take this home and renew your Taf Shin Pei Hey Nshei Ubnos Chabad membership. I would say about 18 years ago, there was a Nshei gathering. It was in Lubavitcher Yeshiva. And the MC was encouraging the attendees to take upon themselves an area of Miftzayim to help the Rebbe's vision. And living with we are the ones the Rebbe is asking. Not her, not she, not the other one, me. And they asked that we shouldn't leave the evening without checking something off. And they needed some things that I felt were a tall order, and some things that I could give an hour of my time. I know how to drive. I'm Baruch Hashem blessed with a car. They need a driver. Let me commit to being a driver. From a driver to a speaker, to running challah bakes, all in different nursing homes. I have walked with many special women in this room. They've spent time with me in the car. They have Farbrengen with me. It happened at that Nshei event. We need you. Today, this year, we are handing out over 2,000 pieces of lekach in over 40 nursing homes. The Rebbe honored his father by creating Tiferes Levi Yitzchak. Who stood by Reb Leivik? Rebbetzin Chana. We need to stand by the Pa'ula of Tiferes Levi Yitzchak, which has extended to all those nursing homes. They need you. An hour a week, 2 hours a week, an hour a month. Pack bags. Donate. Be a driver. Please. Please. You can join the Miftzayim groups that go out regularly, drive or donate, and you can take the Neshek kits in your bags. We are celebrating 50 years of Miftzah Neshek, donated by Mr. Shmuel Levy, and the Miftzayim cards, and keep them in your purse or jacket pocket to give them to someone you meet. Tishrei guides and more brochures are available outside. Thank you, Miri. In your bags, you'll also find a gift from the Miftzayim committee, a newly printed, beautiful stories of women who've gone on Mivtzayim. Shana, please bring me the bag so I could show the women. And their reach in the first and unique book of Mivtzayim stories. Shana, it's on the chair. It's on the chair under the paper. This book is an easy read. It's inspiring, and it has been printed for you to take home. There is a book card. It has a message of Mashiach. Please, put this on your coffee table, have your guests read it, and join the very important call of the hour, Mivtzayim. Today, one of the Nshei members wrote in for a bracha, and when she opened the Igris, there was a beautiful response where the Rebbe is going to give special coins to people that take on Mivtza Neshek. There were a lot of brachas, and the Rebbe thanked in the letter for speaking and doing actions that have to do with Mivtzayim. In your bag, and Mivtzayim on the go in your bag. Also, in this bag of treats, a tzedakah coin. Please, Taira Tfiler tzedakah, please make sure this coin is given tonight. Next, we have Project Chana Power Hour. Was started 1 year ago in honor of Tishrei to prepare ourselves in our homes to welcome Mashiach. Join the weekly learning of women pertinent mitzvahs in the name Chana, my passion, my namesake, Chala Nida Hatlakes Neres, Mivtza Neshek, 50 years, Rebbetzin Chana's Tira, 60 years. We're celebrating special big numbers. Please take it on. If you will direct your attention to the screen, you will hear more about the Power Hour. Oh, we're doing the Power Hour after? Okay. Next. Yeah, but the third point? The third point later? Okay. To be continued, part 3 and the video. Because we are really, really grateful and we thank Mrs. Chani Zalmanov for joining us here tonight. Mrs. Chani Zalmanov grew up on shluchas, is a shlucha, is named after Rebbetzin Chana in the very first year after Rebbetzin Chana's passing. Her mother-in-law was zeicha to be an attendant, a helper, on the side of Rebbetzin Chana through her really difficult journey coming here, Baruch Hashem. She went on the last boat out with her, the last train. She traveled with her. And we're going to hear more about this personal story. We thank Mrs. Chani Zalmanov for coming. She's Baruch Hashem celebrating a simcha, and she traveled far from being with her daughter, who I believe just gave birth. Please pay attention, Mrs. Chani Zalmanov.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good evening. It's a very special night for those of us, for all of us here tonight, for those of us named after Rebbetzin Chana during the first year after she passed away, of which I made it by the skin of my teeth, born on Yud Beis Elul, just about a month before her first yahrzeit, which means those of us that we still call ourselves girls that are turning 60, Baruch Hashem, is a very special year for us. Zeh Shakana Chachma is what it means to turn 60, and we're all very proud and excited, and it's 60 years later, and we're still proud to be named after Rebbetzin Chana. I wanted to share a few thoughts with you about her life, and then also share with you some of the memories of my mother-in-law, Yocheved Zalman of Alaa Shalom, as well. So to begin with, I think that we always try to find something relevant in the life of our Rebbetzins that we feel can make a difference for us and can help us in our life today. I think there are some incredible midas of Rebbetzin Chana that are more relevant today than ever. When Rebbetzin Chana was in Almata, we know that she wrote her memoirs of what it was like to be alone with the Rebbe in the middle of nowhere. And last year, one of my siblings traveled for the Reb Leivik's yahrzeit to Almata, and he mentioned that there was a beautiful Farbrengen there, and one of the Chassidim who was Farbrengen said something very interesting, and I would like to give it over, and he did not know the name of this Chassid, so whoever he was, he knows who he is. And this is what he told the Chassidim that he was Farbrengen with, and it was his thoughts, and I'm going to share them with you. He says, you know, in our life, stories are very meaningful. Those are the things that they grab us. They give meaning to our lives. They inspire us. Stories of Chassidim are unbelievable, but the story that our Rebbe tells is very special. But if you ask me, he says, the stories that really make the most difference in our life, that are the highest level of stories in the world of Chassidus, he says, those are the stories of the Rebbetzins. Because the Rebbetzins will tell us stories about things that maybe the Rebbeim would never tell us. And maybe their husbands would never share. But when their wives shared them, they gave us a gift. When Reb Leivik was in Gullus, we don't know if he would have written down everything that happened to him. Maybe we would have never known that on Simchas Torah, Reb Leivik was dancing around the table in his little shack. Who told us this? Rebbetzin Chana. In her incredible memoirs, she told us this. She shared this with us. Another story she shared that was very meaningful, she describes how one Beis Nisan, the yahrzeit of the Rashab, Reb Leivik was sitting in their little hut, and he was sad. He says, you know, it's such a special day. I need to Farbring, but I have no one to Farbring with. He says, so instead, I should really write Chassidus. He says, but I have no ink. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to think. I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to take myself to a better place and a better time, and I'm going to track Chassidus. And that's what he did. Sat there, closed his eyes, and it was quiet. After a very long time, he opened his eyes, and he was very, very happy. And he said, he says, we're Chassidim, and we have to be b'simcha. But the Rebbetzin writes how this was the impetus, this was the moment where she saw the pain of her husband. He had no Chassidim to Farbring with. He had no ink to write his thoughts with. That's torture. So at that moment, she decided she had to do something. And that's when she went out into the fields and picked berries and made ink for her husband. And when you see pictures of the pages of Chassidus that Reb Leivik wrote, sometimes you see different color ink. And it was based on, depending on the type of berries that she chose and that she squeezed ink from. What do I think? I don't think Rebbetzin Chana thought that this was going to be something that we would talk about a generation later. She went, she did what needed to be done without thinking, wow, everyone's going to talk about me. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be somebody that people are going to say, you saved Kabbalah from Reb Leivik with your selfless act. No, she went out and did whatever she could to make a difference. And I think for us, for me, in today's day and age, we live in such an era of social media, and we're always promoting. For me, we're promoting our Chabad house, and it's part of our job, and we need to do it. But do we ever think for a minute what it means to do something where no one's going to know and be fully and completely at peace with ourselves? And I think that's a gift that we can take from Rebbetzin Chana, which is to live in the moment, to do what you need to do because it needs to be done, and to be like Rebbetzin Chana and to stay regal and kind and gracious and forgiving and there for others, with doing what you need to do without people knowing about it. That's a tall order, and I think that's food for thought for us on this very, very special night tonight, to be able to emulate her in that special way. I wanted to share with you as well some stories. As I mentioned, a Chassidish story is something that really has an impact from my mother-in-law's memoirs that she wrote about leaving Russia on the last train out of Russia from Lvov after World War II. What was so special, I feel, about her writings, besides that she's my shviger, Allah Shalom, is it's very rare to find memoirs of that time that are very emotional. As you know, for our grandparents and our great-grandparents that went through that devastating time in Russia, they didn't have time for their feelings. They were on the run. They were either starving or running from Stalin. Yidden were running from Hitler. It was from one nightmare to another nightmare. And they weren't a generation that shared their emotions very easily. In my mother-in-law's memoirs, which I'm sure are available or we can make available, her emotions stand out. And it shocked me to read them the first time I read them, to really take a moment and think, they were afraid. They were scared. They were sad. They were depressed. They were people, just like we were. We look at them as like made out of steel, made out of iron, unflinching. It's true. They were that. But they were people, and they were women and men and children that survived. And they had difficult times, but they survived with joy and with his kashrus and with emunah and bitachon in a way that can inspire us for generations. When the war was over, the word spread in Russia that the Russian government was going to allow Polish citizens to have a period of grace where they could leave the blessed land of Russia to go back to Poland. And after that, the Iron Curtain was going to come slamming down. The news spread very quietly to Lubavitcher Chassidim that were all over Russia, from Tashkent to Samarkand to Leningrad, wherever they were, that there was going to be a short window of time where they could escape Russia, come to Lvov. So one by one, broken families that had lost siblings and children and parents, came streaming into Lvov, petrified for their lives, hiding, waiting to hear that there was going to be a train where they were going to be able to escape as Polish citizens that had passed away, along with many Polish Holocaust survivors that had run to Russia to escape the Holocaust as well. To describe their fear, I don't know how to describe fear that you could actually touch. And as Chassidim that went through that time period know, the heroes of the day were the Muchkin brothers, who fearlessly got fake passports for everybody, money, did everything that they needed to do to make sure that as many Lubavitchers as possible would be on these trains escaping Russia. My mother-in-law and her sister, Hadassah Perman, Allah Shalom, were two young teenage girls, came to Lvov, which she writes as a story into itself, with their father, Chayamir Garelik, Allah Shalom, who was a shliach in Krim, and their brother, Gershom Mendel Garelik, Allah Shalom, and they were waiting for this last train. While they were waiting, their cousins, the Muchkin brothers, said to my shviger, my mother-in-law, and her sister, you know, you're young, you're a bunch of teenagers, we need you, we're recruiting you. And they sent them traveling throughout the city with papers and false passports and money, go to bring it to this door here and that door there, and they ran around as if they were on vacation touring the first city that they had ever seen that wasn't in Russia. And it was a scary time. Finally, the day came that they heard the news. The train, this is the last train, it's leaving. It's leaving Lvov, and we're leaving, and this is the last opportunity to leave Russia. They come to the train, their hearts are beating. She describes her heart beating so hard, she felt that it was gonna explode. And they were so grateful to be there. And one of the Muchkin brothers comes over to my mother-in-law and says, listen, I need a favor. I need you to go to a certain address and bring a woman who needs to be on this train, and we're going to be waiting for you, and we're going to be waiting for her. And my mother described, she was a teenager, how she was so petrified to actually back away from this train. That was her only escape route out of Russia. And we know when that train left, Chassidim were stuck in Russia for decades. Some were in Siberia, some were killed, and it was a very difficult time. But she went. She and her sister went, they followed the address, and they come to this apartment. They come outside the apartment, and they hear from inside this apartment a woman crying, I can't do it. I can't go. I can't leave my husband. I can't leave my son. I can't do this. It's too much for me. And they were heartbroken. They knock on the door, and they say, we're here from the Muchkin brothers to come and get this woman and take her to the train. We're waiting. It's the last train, and time's running out. And this woman was sitting in the room, and they did not know who she was. Regal, beautiful, with tears streaming down her cheeks. I can't go. I can't do it. She saw my mother-in-law and her sister, and she said, okay, with these girls, I'll go. And she dried her tears, and they took her to the train, and they got to the train, and they got on, and the second they got on, the train pulled out. The train traveled. The Lubavitchers were in fear. The train was cold. It wasn't a train for human beings, it was a train for animals. All through the night, they're traveling on this train, and my mother-in-law's father says to her, we have a very warm blanket in our suitcase. Take this blanket, climb over people, and in the corner of the train, you'll see that woman that you brought to the train station. Give it to her. So she takes this blanket and she goes climbing over people in the middle of the night. And she brings her this blanket and she says, this is for you. And she says, thank you so much. And she gave her brachos. And my mother-in-law describes how she started to cry because she missed her mother. She was a young teenager who didn't have a mother. And the Rebbetzins' love and her warmth and her compassion touched her. And she went back to her spot, and the train continued going where it was going. The train stops in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, with screams and shouts. And there was tremendous fear on the train because they were all Polish refugees going back to Poland with Polish passports and Polish names that they had memorized, but nobody spoke a word of Polish. And soldiers took them off the train, and they screamed at them, who are you, and where are you coming from? And they stood there, silent, shaking, and no one said a word. And somebody said, they're all deaf-mute gypsies. And they stood there, this ragtag group of Lubavitcher refugees, and they didn't say a word, and they didn't react. They yelled and they screamed. They let them go back on the train, Pashat Nissim, and off they went. Another time, my mother described how at another point in their train journey, they had taken them off the train, and Actually, we'll get to that in a minute when they got to Czechoslovakia. Friday morning, the train stops in the middle, and they tell everyone, off, get off the train. We're going to put you on trucks, and we're going to take you to Krakow. What had happened was Jewish people, in fact, they said it was the Brecha, it was the Jewish agency and the joint, they had bribed the train conductors to stop the train before it would go deeper into Poland. Because the trains that had gone before from Russia to Poland and kept on going into Poland, when they got off the trains in the middle of Poland, there was so much anti-Semitism. And they didn't want this train that had Rebbetzin Chana on it to go any further than it needed to. So they bribed the train officials, they stopped the train, and they took everybody off the train. They put them on trucks, and they drove them to Krakow. The first train of Lubavitchers, actually, was attacked as they crossed the Czechoslovakian border, and they were shot at. And one of the women was actually killed on that train, and they decided they needed to get them off the train. So now they took them in trucks, and they're taking them to smuggle them across the Czechoslovakian border in the middle of the night with Rebbetzin Chana amongst them. And they told them, we're walking quietly, we're walking quickly, we're not talking, we're going to get to a little hut in the middle of the forest, we're going to try to pass through as quickly as we can and get to the other side, and get out of Poland. They get to the border. It was a little hut with a bunch of armed guards, and they're all standing there again, these deaf, mute gypsies, and they are looking at them with much hatred in their eyes, and they spot my mother-in-law with a suitcase that was actually a more new suitcase. And they got their eyes on that suitcase, and they started to scream at my mother-in-law, what's in your suitcase? Give me your suitcase. Who are you? And they took her and they dragged her into the hut, away from all the other Lubavitchers. They opened up the suitcase. What was inside the suitcase? The blanket. They said, that's it? She says, yeah, a blanket. They stabbed the blanket, they shook it up, they cut it up, they looked for gold coins. They saw there was nothing there. They closed up the blanket and they let her go free. Later on, the guard said it was an absolute miracle that they let her out. She comes back out, the Lubavitchers, the whole train is standing there shaking. Baruch Hashem, they continue on their way. And finally, they have their first free Shabbos on the other side of the border. It was the first time these Lubavitchers had been out of Russia. And they were welcomed as heroes that had escaped communism and a novelty. No one from the other countries in Eastern Europe had ever met somebody from Russia. And there they were, and they had an absolutely beautiful, beautiful Shabbos together. And after that Shabbos, they continued on the train, and they took them to Peking. They got to Peking, which was, a huge DP camp in Germany, where there were Jews from all over Europe, and they kind of divided themselves up into groups that they would be comfortable with, people from their own country, their own landsman, from their own city. And the Lubavitchers settled themselves on a quiet street at the end of a forest in Peking. And they set up, of course, what was the first thing they set up? Taimchei Tmimim. And they opened a shtibel and a shul and classes for the boys to learn, and made it through day by day. And Rebbetzin Chana was there with them, and she had a little room for herself. And my mother-in-law tells how as the winter was coming in, and it was getting very, very cold, Gershom Mendel, alav shalom, and a few of his friends would go off into the forest without permission, because actually the American soldiers were very strict. They walked around with guns and whips, and they wouldn't let anybody get out of line or go where they weren't supposed to go. And they weren't supposed to leave the camp and go into the forest. But they walked off into the forest, and they would chop firewood and bring it to Rebbetzin Chana and light a fire for her. And my mother-in-law would be the guard. Her brother said, come stand with us by the forest, be a guard, we're going to chop wood for Rebbetzin Chana. And she did that. As the winter progressed and things got colder and wetter and it rained and it snowed, there was no firewood that was going to work. So my mother-in-law's brother says to her, come with us. We're going to stand by the forest and we're going deeper into the forest. And they walk deeper into the forest and they come to a hut. And her brother walks into this hut and he says, okay, we have some work to do. You stand outside, watch that nobody's coming, and we're getting firewood for Rebbetzin Chana. What did they do? They walked into the hut, these Lubavitcher boys, and they chopped up the tables and the chairs to get firewood for Rebbetzin Chana. The noise brought the police. They came storming through the forest, and they ran for their lives, and they quickly hid the tables and chairs that they had chopped up behind the hut. And the police came, and they left, and they came, and they schlepped this firewood to Rebbetzin Chana's little room where she was going to be able to be warm for the months to come. It was a very confusing time. It was a beautiful time. It was a time of achdus where every refugee felt so grateful to be alive, where every refugee felt ashreinu matayv chalkeinu, where they felt that every minute on German soil was painful, where they didn't know where life was going to take them. And they banded together like a family. My mother-in-law writes how the List family was on one side of her and the eunuchs were on the other side, and all the girls together there was something that united them, that until the end of their lives, they felt a special connection with each other through those times. And my mother-in-law never knew who Rebbetzin Chana was. It was kept very quiet for, I guess, many different reasons. Maybe some older chassidim knew, but nobody really spoke about it. And to me, it's a little bit strange. You don't know that she's the Rebbetzin. How do you not know? So my mother-in-law describes in her memoirs how you have to understand that in Russia, they were afraid to speak Yiddish. The word Rebbetzin was a forbidden word in the home. These were things that they spoke about in whispers behind closed doors. You know, Ashreinu Matayv Chalkeinu, we know our history. They didn't know. They were living the history that we talk about. But they weren't so aware of what was going on, because it would have been dangerous for them to know what everybody was doing. The hidden cheders, every person that would know was another person that could get someone into danger. So they really didn't know. But there was one point where somebody told my mother-in-law, who was a young girl, "You know who you're visiting? Don't you know who that is?" And my mother-in-law was in shock. She says, "I have to stop. Who am I?" And she felt bad because Rebbetzin Chana was like a mother to her. She was like a mother to everybody. But for someone who didn't have a mother, she felt that connection so much more deeply. And Rebbetzin Chana showed her tremendous love and probably knew that she didn't have a mother and was therefore so warm and just connected with her in a very deep level. My mother-in-law decides she needs to go to seminary. She heard about a place not far from Peking, where there was a sem for daughters of rabbis and people who wanted to learn. So she left Peking and she went to this seminary. She describes how she comes there. And again, it was a novelty to see a young girl from communist Russia. And they sat together, and it was actually it was in Fürstensaal. It was a seminary in Fürstensaal, which means the palace of rulers. And she describes how it was an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous palace. And it was used by these girls to sit and learn. They had an incredible teacher. She thinks that it was arranged by one of the Twerskis, that the daughters of Rebbeim and Holocaust survivors were there waiting to decide what to do with their life. And she said it was just a very beautiful time. One night, it was practically midnight, the phone rings. She didn't even know there was a phone. But somebody comes running to her and says, "You have a phone call. Quick, run." She says, "A phone call? A phone?" Forget about a phone call. A phone? Whoever saw a phone? He said, No, go. Our teacher is waiting for you. You have a phone call. She runs to whatever area it was, and the teacher says to her, "Yeah, here's a phone, but your mother just hung up." "Who was it?" She says, "I have a message for you." "Okay. Your mother says to tell her daughter," and she gave her name, Yocheved Zalmanov, "I'm leaving for Paris at 6 o'clock in the morning. Please come to say goodbye and travel with me to Frankfurt." My mother-in-law's a teenager. It's midnight, and she needs to travel back to Pucking, and she didn't know what to do. She says, "How am I supposed to get there?" Her teacher said, "I have an idea. There's a 3 a.m. train from here to Munich with a stop in Pucking, and you'll get off there." They run to the train on a wagon, a horse and buggy. Who comes along with her? All the 30 girls from her seminary come. Girls from all over Europe are on this train, taking her, or on this wagon to take her to the train station to get onto this train. She gets on the train. She gets off at Pucking. It's practically morning. 3 a.m. train, it's probably 5 o'clock. The sun is just about to set, and she gets to the Pucking train station, and she runs and runs and runs to the DP camp. She comes into the camp. It's early morning. She expects it to be quiet. Everyone's going to be asleep. The place is rocking. There are so many people up and about, especially on the street where all the Lubavitchers lived. And she saw a huge crowd, and she said, she felt shy. And so she snuck away back to her room. She went to check up if her father's there, her siblings are there, because she had had a moment of panic when she got a message that she had a phone call. She started to, "Oh my gosh, a phone call? Something must have happened. I left my family. What was I thinking? Just because I wanted to learn." But then she got this message, the Rebbetzin wants her to come. But she stayed in her little house on the street in Pucking, and someone comes barging in and says, "What are you doing here? Everybody's waiting for you because the Rebetzin's waiting for you in the wagon to go. Come." If you would have known my mother-in-law, Alaa Shalom, she was such a private, dignified, shy woman. She wasn't shy. The wrong word. She was strong. She was powerful. She was capable. She was talented. But she wasn't out there. They didn't know of that term in those days. But she wasn't out there. And she wasn't looking for attention. She was very, very embarrassed. But they schlepped her and they dragged her and they parted the crowds and they said, "No, get in the wagon. The Rebbetzin is not going to leave without you." They stuff her in the wagon. And the Rebbetzin says, "Okay, now we can go." Because the Rebbetzin told everybody, they said, "No, take her. There's other people. We don't know where she is. She's coming from a train in the middle of the night." She says, "No, I want to go with her. It's a comfort for me." They get to the station in Munich, and they went to the consulate, to a very big building, to rest up until that evening. That evening, there were 2 chassidim that were with her to accompany her on her journey. And they came with her to the train station to get on the train to get to Frankfurt. And they're in the train station. There's 2 chassidim and someone from the consulate and the Rebbetzin and Yocheved Zalmanov. And they're on the way to go to Paris, to travel to America, to reunite with the Rebbe. All of a sudden, they're screaming and yelling and they hear sounds. Kill those Jews. Kill those Jews, those cursed Jews. And they hear gunshots. And it's somebody who's looking at them, aiming the gun at them. And my mother-in-law grabs the Rebbetzin and drags her into a doorway, blocks her with her body, and sees the eyes of this gunman who's shooting at them. And Baruch Hashem, miraculously, the gunshots went to the right and they went to the left, and they didn't hit them. When the chaos was over and the train station quieted down, the two chassidim were nowhere to be found. They had run for their lives because they were being shot at, and the train was leaving. They were somewhere there, but a miracle happened. What was the miracle? The Rebbetzin had her ticket and her papers in her own pocket. The chassidim that had disappeared, that were supposed to accompany her on this train, and Yocheved Zalman of my mother-in-law was supposed to have gone back to Pucking. Now the Rebbetzin says, you have to come with me. There's nobody here. And they get on this train, and miraculously she had her papers and her train ticket with her. And she describes how an entire night they sat there on the train shaking. They just sat there holding on to each other, shaking, because they were so petrified over what had happened. And if you could imagine Rebbetzin Chana and everything that she had went through and everything that we know about her, does it ever end? And yet she remained, and she survived with her dignity and her sense of humor and her selflessness, never thinking about herself, intact. Intact. My mother-in-law describes how in the middle of the night, she was holding on for dear life. They had just almost been shot. She says to herself, what am I doing? I'm holding on for dear life to a Rebbetzin, and she's holding on to me. Let me move over a little bit. So she takes herself and she sits a little bit away from the Rebbetzin just to give her some space. As we say today, give me some space. And the Rebbetzin looks at her and says, I want you to never forget about me. Promise me you will never forget about me. And what can I give you to thank you for coming along with me? Not just to Frankfurt, but now, the first leg of the journey, the first train, but also this train that you weren't supposed to be on. And she pulls out of her pocket, she says, I want to give you a picture of myself that was taken as ID of me when I was going to be with my husband in Galus in Kazakhstan. And I'm also going to give you a picture of my only granddaughter who lives in Eretz Yisrael, and these are my treasured pictures. Take them with you and remember me. I will tell you that for many, many decades, my mother-in-law never shared that picture with anyone. The Rebbetzin is hard to recognize. She looks sad. She looks like she has the weight of the world on her shoulders. And my mother-in-law felt that it wasn't a picture that should be shared of the Rebbetzin. We have beautiful pictures from when she came to America and had the beautiful years of her life. Those are the pictures that we should know of Rebbetzin Chana. And she hid the picture away, and she never made any photocopies until her sons grew up and became Bachrim, and her brother came from Italy, and they made their Chassidische Genevis, and they took the picture and made some copies. But until she passed away, that picture was never shared. It is shared now. I'm sure some of you have seen it, but the picture is so unusual that when I hung it in my home, in my daughter's bedrooms or upstairs, people would say, oh, is that your grandmother? I'm like, actually, it's Rebbetzin Chana. And they would be like, what? But these are the pictures that my mother-in-law was given as a keepsake, and she also gave her a handkerchief with her initials embroidered on it, which she lost in all the trauma and the drama of her chaotic journey. So finally, they're coming to Frankfurt. And in Frankfurt, she was going to get on a train that was going to take her to Paris. And that was where she parted ways with the Rebbetzin, with much tears. And the Rebbetzin said again, please don't forget me. Remember me. And the train left. It was Friday, Erev Shabbos, and I'm going to share this part of the story because I think it's very connected to this incredible night sponsored by Nshei Chabad that is so on fire for the Rebbe's Mivtzoyim. I have nothing but awe for the amount of Mivtzoyim that Nshei Chabad here in Queens do, whether it's Mivtza Neshek or whatever Mivtza it is. What happened? She's standing there, Erev Shabbos, in the middle of Germany, with no money, no papers, nothing. Because she wasn't given any money, because she wasn't supposed to go on that train. Until last minute, there was that shootout in the train station. And it's Friday afternoon, Erev Shabbos, post-war Germany, and this teenage girl opens up the door to the train station, walks outside. It is pouring rain. It's plucking. And she's standing there, and what does she do? What would you do? What would I do? She starts to cry. And she's standing there, and she's sobbing. She doesn't know what to do. Across the street, in this pouring rain, there's a wagon. And a bunch of young Jewish men start screaming at her, Amcha? Are you Amcha? They noticed her, and they saw, she looks like a Jewish girl. You're one of ours, you're a survivor. And they come across the street to her. They were from this kibbutz, Bnei Akiva, combination of whoever needed a place to be for Shabbos. And they said to her, where are you from? She says, I'm from Russia. They said, Russia? We've never met anybody from Russia. And besides that, it's almost Shabbos, you must come with us. We have a place, the Aguda has a place for us, come with us for Shabbos. She gets on their wagon, it's Erev Shabbos, it's pouring rain. She comes to this place where there are Holocaust survivors from all over Europe and from all different types of Yiddish communities. She says that meeting somebody from Russia was such a novelty, they literally made a geirul who she was going to sleep with. And she had to go around to every room where all the girls were and speak to them and talk to them and tell them what life was like in Russia. What do I think is the most fascinating part of this story? What were these chevra doing in town in the pouring rain, Erev Shabbos? They had come to Frankfurt to buy Shabbos candles for the girls that had asked for them. Not the married women, the young girls that had wanted Shabbos candles. And who did they bring back with their Shabbos candles? My mother-in-law. And to me, it's such a specific story of this incredible minhag that was a pre-war minhag that many of these girls that were daughters of rabbis and from girls, what did they want? They wanted candle to light for Shabbos. One candle. So talking tonight about Mivtza Neshek, here's a story that gets you back to a real example of the Mesiras Nefesh that people had to benchlicht. And because of this Neshek that these girls from throughout Europe had wanted post-Holocaust, my mother-in-law was saved. She found a place to go for Shabbos, and after Shabbos, they loaded her up with money and food, and they took her back to the train station, and they sent her back to Poking. What do I think is so incredible about this? Is just, of course, the tip of the iceberg, because we don't want to sit here all night. And what do I think is so incredible? What I think is so incredible is, for me, was to hear that it was real. And especially today, where so many of us don't have mothers and grandmothers that lived through Stalin, that lived through the Holocaust, to know that they were makusher and they were proud. My mother writes, and if I could, to me, there's nothing more boring than listening to somebody read from someone's memoirs. So I'm not going to do it because I wouldn't want to listen to it. But the way my mother-in-law writes with such emotion, how proud they were to be Lubavitch, that the Rebbe was everything to them. The Frierdiker Rebbe was everything to them, and how destroyed they were and how they lived in fear. Their emotions were so real, and they came out with such strong faith. And their DNA is our DNA. And the Rebetzin's emunah and bitachon and her simcha, and the fact that she came to America after such a journey, being shot at and being yelled at and sitting on a train that was meant for animals, traveling in the freezing cold, living in a German DP camp where she was freezing and there were these boys chopping up tables and chairs to light a fire for her. She came to America. And what did she do? All she did was ask other people, how are you? She was, and anyone will tell you, and there are incredible stories of people who will tell you, she was always there to ask us, how are you? A kind word, a good word, lifting up everybody. And that is, again, the lesson that I want to leave you with. No matter what happens in our life, and we all have baggage that we take with us, we all have our struggles, we all have our nisyonos. Let's take with us the strength of Rebbetzin Chana and her dignity and her charisma and her Jewish pride, her ironclad emunah and bitachon, and take it with us into the year of her Shnas HaShishim, and we should live in Mirz Hashem. I want to wish everybody a Gemar Chasima Taiva. I want to ask everybody to please daven for me. I'm a shlocha. Yom Kippur is a long day, and there's not much time for davening, and I try to get up early. I came up with an idea 2 years ago. I'll daven before I go to shul. I'll finish by 9 a.m., and I'll go, and I want to ask all of you, you're standing in 770, you're davening, there's wherever you are, whether you're home, have all the shluchos in the world in mind. We're all sister shluchos. We daven for each other. I want to wish you all a Gemar Chasima Taiva, Gebench Diyar, the Eibusher should bench us all with Geula Mitas Vashlema, with the Rebbe, and with Rebbetzin Chayamushka smiling with her incredible dignity. A good night, everybody.
Wow. That was raw, impactful, and yet so personal. I, named for Rebbetzin Chana, feel like I must reevaluate so many basic qualities, especially gratitude. You did Rebbetzin Chana a beautiful, beautiful tribute. Thank you. Gemar Chasima Taiva to you, our sister, Shlocha. It is only appropriate now that we should hear the beautiful song, A Crown of Creation, in tribute of Rebbetzin Chana, our mother of royalty.
Join along if you know the words. The crown of creation lay broken and bent, shattered our dreams in the dust. Darkness replacing the once holy light. Who can renew this lost trust? The crown of creation lay broken and bent. Well, what could have been is now gone, but it's in our power to build and carry on. Oh, mother of royalty, woman of strength, the message alive in your name, revealing dimensions so hidden within, restoring the crown to women again. Mother of royalty, woman of strength, you carry the promise, Hachem. The name that you bore will yet shine evermore, restoring the crown to us again. The crown of creation creation lay broken and bent, shattered our dreams in the dust. Darkness replacing the one holy light. Who can renew this lost trust? The crown of creation lay broken and bent, while what could have been is now gone. But it's in our power to build and carry on. Oh, mother of royalty, woman of strength, the message alive in your name, revealing dimensions so hidden within, restoring the crown to women again. Mother of royalty, woman of strength, you carry the promise of fame. The name that you bore will yet shine evermore, restoring the crown to us again. Thank you.
Ladies, in just a few minutes, we will be hearing from a mother of a soldier in Gaza, a Miftzayim representative in Eretz Yisrael. But first, to continue on with the 3 ideas to honor Rebbetzin Chana and for Hachotas to take upon yourself tonight. The 3rd idea is Simcha and Bitachon for the Geula. Women in Tzfas, under fire, are saying that when we dance in anticipation for the Geula, it strengthens them. At the end of the program, we will be showing a clip on this. Right now, we will be watching a clip on the Power Hour. On your seats, there are flyers that have a QR code. Please take these home. Open the link, and let's make tonight Hamaisa Hu Ha'ikar. Please, to the screen.
Project Chana Power Hour is a joint project of Nshei Chabad of Crown Heights and mikvah.org that was started a year ago on Vav Tishrei. Our goal is to strengthen ourselves and our homes to welcome Mashiach. Every Tuesday night from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m., women from around the world tune in to review the halachos pertinent to Jewish women. 20 minutes on kashrus, 20 minutes on Shabbos, and 20 minutes on Taras HaMashpacha, as well as other mitzvahs that are special for women. The program is catered to the busy Jewish woman and packs this 1 hour with practical halacha that is important. The classes are live streamed on our website, mikvah.org/power hour, and we have all the playbacks of the classes as well. If you're on the go, you can also listen on your favorite podcast platform by searching up Project Chana Power Hour. Today, partner with us by giving and learning. Log on to mikvah.org/donate and select Project Chana Power Hour as the program to contribute to. Help us continue our year of learning with even greater success. Consider dedicating an hour or a week to bring inspiration into practical action, and you are guaranteed to learn something special and new each time. May our learning strengthen us and our homes and bring every Jew home to Eretz Yisrael with the coming of Mashiach now.
The organizers of tonight's event sent me a few words about the program and the speakers. I will not be using their words to introduce the next speaker. Right now, it is Chodesh Tishrei. Crown Heights is bustling with the Rebbe's Archim. And we Crown Heightsers take upon ourselves to host the Rebbe's guests. Someone that has done this in an outstanding fashion, always has been my mother. My home has always been filled with guests. One of the warmest and most enjoyable guests that I had in my childhood was a girl by Devorah Leah. Devorah Leah was my savior in 770, especially one Matzah Yom Kippur. I fasted. My parents lived far away from 770. I was 11 years old and I was hungry. In those days, it wasn't in the over-the-top fashion like there is today. And I see Mrs. Rabashkin there. We didn't have the Avram Avinu of today. And I was so hungry. And Nachum's truck had pastries. And I got a hold of one. And some Israelis said, "It's for the guests." I was hungry. I lived far. And my mother, if you know her, was not leaving 770 anytime soon. Devorah Leah saw me. She saw my eyes starting to well up. And she said, "What is it?" "I'm hungry." She got me a pastry. And I remember that all these years later. And when I saw her name on the program, my heart, I recall that favor, many other favors, and now a mother of a soldier in Gaza, doing the Rebbe's Mivtzayim in Eretz Yisrael, visiting prisons. I am humbled and honored to call up a dear old guest in my mother's home, Devorah Leah.
Hi. Erev Tov. Gmar Chasima Tova. I'll try to speak just in English. Although I'm American, but I was just born here, but we lived in Israel. I don't remember the story, but I guess it's true. As we learned from the Rebbetzin Chana to be in Mesiris in the Inyan. So my only son last year, after the summer he was in the army, before the Yomim Tovim, he went to Beis Chabad in Indonesia to be over there in the Chagim. And I was here by the Rebbe, and then Simchas Torah came, and I was very worried about what's going to be if my only son is going to go. I didn't want him to go, but till the Yom Tov was finished here, and we talked to him, he said, "I'm on the way to Israel in another few hours." I told him, "But you were last year in the summer, you were in the army already. Just a month ago you finished." So he said, "You think that's what they'll do to my לעם שלי, ואני לא אעשה נקמה? אני לא יכול לשבת באינדונזיה ככה, למרות it's like was reshut. It's not that he's a soldier now, it's in miloim, whatever you call it. So then we were here another week or two, and then we went to Israel. Before we went to Israel, Mrs. Elka Matasov told us the story about the Mipir Lalim and the Psukim of the Rebbe for wars. So I told my daughter that she was then 10 years old. We decided that we'll go back and we'll do everyday Psukim rallies every day and Tehillim. And we came back to Israel, to Kfar Chabad. We live in Kfar Chabad, and then she did in the school and wherever she could do rallies the whole time. So my son, that his job in the army as a fighter is to save life. I don't know how it's called, chovesh, but he's not a chovesh. He's a head counselor of the chovshim. And he needs to go in the army with his group to every war. I mean, he can't sleep hardly. So when he would come home after a few weeks for 2 days of sleep, we could hardly speak to him because he would just go to sleep in the bathroom for a few hours. We couldn't talk to him even. So when first of all, when he's there, he has no phone, so we're very worried, and we don't know what's going on with them. We just know that at nighttime they have the real fights because they have special glasses to see through at night and better than daytime. So they do most of their fights at nighttime. So the whole night we would stay up. My husband would go to Beis Menachem to say Tehillim, and I would say Tehillim. And we're always praying, no night, no days. And one of the things that helped me really is that I said to myself that it's written in the Rambam that Melech HaMashiach yilcham milchamot Hashem v'yenatzeach. So I said, okay, for the soldiers, lo muftach nitzachon. It's not promised that they'll have a good fight, lenatzeach. But for the Mashiach is borrow that muftach nitzachon. So I would invite the Rebbe every night to go to my son, to all the soldiers, to fight for them, to be in front of them. And that was really nechama for me. I know that I'm not alone, and the Rebbe is there to fight with them. When he would come back, the whole time my daughter was saying psukim and tehillim, and she's still tinok shabesh rabam. When he would come home, so I would tell him, can you tell me a few stories about Nisim Niflois? So he said, what do you call Nisim and Niflois? If I hear a bullet in my left ear and then a bullet in my right ear and a bullet on the top of my head, is this a miracle? I said, yes, of course. Okay, so you have lots of miracles of those. As a job, as saving life, so he had a few times really, he was very frightened, but he needed to continue to save life. Like once he was asleep in a different apartment of Arabs in Gaza, and they called him to save life of soldiers that got hurt in the other house. And because he was half asleep, he like went the wrong way. So he was like in the back of the Hamasnikim, and he said it's a big miracle that they didn't do nothing to him. He told us another few stories, like he tried to save a life of some soldier that fainted because his friend lost lots of blood, so he needed to pull him out because he was so he's trying to pull him, and then he realized as he's pulling him that he's next to his legs there's a beginning of a tunnel, so he was very pressured to like to do it fast and to move from the place over there. So that was what we had till Pesach. Pesach time he had a small vacation. Then after Pesach they took out Arba Chatufim, four whatever. And Baruch Hashem, he was not the main of, but behind. It was a big tochnit for it, so he was one of the tochniot next to the place. Right now, they're getting prepared for Lebanon, but meanwhile now he's on a vacation of soldiers that healing soldiers, because Baruch Hashem, he's alive and he's full in his body, but his soul got hurt a little bit because he saw lots of bad things, and he had lots of pressure to try to save lives of soldiers, and he still smells blood the whole time. So Be'ezrat Hashem, you could say, Amen Chizkiyahu Chaim Ben Dvorolea. Yeshua is for him, for all the soldiers. He should build his house, Be'ezrat Hashem, Chatuna, Be'ezrat Hashem, Yivne Bayit. So I wanted to tell you that, to share you that I feel and I'm sure that because the rallies and the psukim and the tehillim, Baruch Hashem, everything is, like B'soros Tovos with him, and there should be more. And also to share with you that I do lots of mivtzoim in Israel, also in the jail for soldiers, girls, and wherever I talk to women or men, soldiers, everybody is in a big hitorus. I never saw such a hitorus in Israel. Even more mitzvahs, more masim tovim, more believe in God. Whoever I talk to, everybody understands that this time it's not a regular war. It needs to be a war of Hashem. There's no choice. And that's why everybody is in big hitorus. So I came here to ask from you, everybody, to continue davening, do rallies, and pray, and not to give up, and to do whatever we could, that Mashiach to come very fast. Be'ezrat Hashem. Chi HaMelech.
Verleah, thank you for the Danish and for sharing your words and for your son and all the Chayalim. May Hashem watch over them, watch over their mothers. May Hashem help the mothers sleep at night. We know that's a hard and tall order. And really that this should all be behind us with Mashiach right now. As the evening draws to a close, we would like to thank the committee who worked under Nshei Chabad for weeks for tonight's event. We thank you, Chaim Ashka Gierman, Verleah Hirsch, Rifki Levy, and Zohar Sasson, who has now also joined me in the 7th grade in Beis Rivka. We, Immer Tashem, will be having beautiful dancing, singing, but before that, we ask that you watch the following clip, which is about the idea number 3, which will be followed by dancing and music. I want to take this time to wish each and every single one of you a Gemar Chsima Taiva, Mashiach now. May all the negativity be batal b'shishim as we celebrate 60 years of our Mother of Royalty, Rebbetzin Chana.
Hello, beautiful Jewish women everywhere. My name is Chana Margulies, and I'm in Tzfat, Israel. You can see the beautiful Mount Meron right behind me. You can hear the jets in the air, and you can feel the vibrations of war. More importantly, you can hear the sounds of Geula. Redemption is close. You can feel it. There's an excitement in the air. There's a feeling of hope here. This is not a time to be afraid. This is not a time to despair. This is not a time to check the news constantly and wait to see what's happening. This is a time to dance and drum and sing and to really be part of the prophecies that are unfolding right here, right now. As Jewish women, we have such a power of joy. We set the tone for our home with joy, and we set the tone for the entire Jewish people right now by not being in a space of fear, but being in a space of joy and strength and altira. But we're not afraid because good news is imminent. We are ready to go to the Beis Hamikdash, dancing and drumming and singing. Please join me and the Women of the North. Every single Friday, we have a dance together on Zoom. We grab our drums, we grab our tambourines, we have an incredible DJ. And what do? We just dance and thank Hashem for Geula here and now. This past Friday, we had a series of rockets overhead, which thank God were all shot down. And then an hour later, we had our incredible dance party with so many women from overseas, from all over North America, joining us and bringing us joy and dancing with us. And for me, it took all the stress out of me, all the intensity of running to the shelter that morning. I was left renewed. And after our dance ended, there was another barrage of rockets, which thank God were all shot down. And I felt a new strength, an inner calm, and a resilience of not being shaken up the same way because we had the opportunity to dance and have fun together and be this place of simcha and light. So please join me and the Women of the North every Friday on Zoom as we dance for Geula, as we thank Hashem for the 13 attributes of mercy that are shining on us, that we thank Hashem for the miracles. The greatest way right now to support our soldiers is by trusting them and trusting that God is with them, and by thanking Hashem in advance for all the victories and all the miracles, and by doing that with the power of joy. So I'm excited to see you this Friday and every Friday on Zoom. Come bring us joy and tap into the joy that we're experiencing, and let's all see miracles now. Thank you.
Thank you, Devora. Devora will be playing live music right now. We will be joining the women of the North while we, right here, the women of Kansiva Shamas Abracha, dance to the Geula. Please join. Dancing's in the front. Thank you, Devora. Thank you, Yainasan and Hackner Sound. Thank you, everyone that was involved in preparing tonight. And again, Arichas Yamim to the Nshei Ubnos Chabad Committee.